Hi, friend. I'm so grateful to have you back for another week in Galatians. We're in chapter 3 of Galatians today, starting with day 1. And Paul, he is on fire. He's on fire for the gospel, holding fast to faith in Jesus Christ. Let's read and we'll talk about it. Oh, foolish Galatians, who has bewitched you? It was before your eyes that Jesus Christ was publicly portrayed as crucified. Let me ask you only this. Did you receive the Spirit by works of the law or by hearing with faith? Are you so foolish? Having begun by the Spirit, are you now being perfected by the flesh? Did you suffer so many things in vain, if indeed it was in vain? Does he who supplies the Spirit to you and works miracles among you do so by works of the law or by hearing with faith? Just as Abraham believed God, and it was counted to him as righteousness. Know then that it is those of faith who are the sons of Abraham. And the scripture, foreseeing that God would justify the Gentiles by faith, preached the gospel beforehand to Abraham, saying, in you shall all the nations be blessed. So then, those who are of faith are blessed along with Abraham, the man of faith. Oh, I love it. And reading it out loud, I just realized there were some more things that I neglected to mark down in my notes, but my workbook it's really covered today. Well, we need to begin by putting Galatians chapter 3 into context and remembering, okay, where have we been so far in this letter? Well, Paul has presented who he was before Christ, his encounter with Christ, and who he is or what he has been doing since his encounter with Christ. And what is that? He's been preaching the gospel. He was authorized by Jesus Christ himself to preach the good news of Jesus. He's been preaching the true gospel, authorized by Jesus himself. He's made that abundantly clear. He's also made it clear that the gospel he preaches to the Gentiles has been affirmed. It's been verified by the other apostles, the pillars of the faith, James, Peter, and John. He also says, look, I'm not a people pleaser. I'm a Jesus pleaser. And he gave evidence of that as he opposed Peter. We saw that last week, his opposition to Peter, calling Peter out for not holding on to grace alone. So we left off last week on day 4 by this idea. Paul made abundantly clear what justification is and how one is justified by faith alone. And he said, look, no one is justified by works of the law. All right. No one is made right by the works of the law. What do the works of the law do? Well, friends, we learned in Romans chapter 3, verse 20, for by works of the law, no human being will be justified in God's sight, since through the law comes knowledge of sin. Those laws just reveal to us so clearly that we are all sinners in need of a Savior. All right. Paul made, as we wrapped up last week, Paul made abundantly clear that no one will be saved by works of the law. How is one saved? Well, he made it clear by faith in Jesus Christ. Let me see. Okay, verse 16 we said was so important. This was chapter 2, verse 16. We know that a person is not justified by works of the law, but through faith in Jesus Christ. He couldn't be any clearer. So he talks about that. He goes on, or we saw that he went on in day 4 to say, look, I am living by faith. I myself, I've been crucified with Christ. It is no longer I who live, but Christ who lives in me. And the life I now live in the flesh, I live by faith in the Son of God. Why? Because he loved me and he gave himself for me. So Paul makes abundantly clear who he is, this man, this apostle, this one who's been authorized to preach the good news of Jesus Christ. I'm a man who's living by faith, he says. And now he turns his direction back to the people who make up the churches of Galatia. And he starts off pretty harshly, doesn't he? Pretty harshly. Oh, foolish Galatians, who has bewitched you? Now, I have to say, if somebody called me foolish, it would be hard for me to hear anything else they had to say, all right? After he used that word foolish twice, I then put it in my keyword column and looked it up in my Bible dictionary. And it's like a light bulb went off. It made sense to me. Foolish means mindless, not marked by use of reason. So Paul is saying, he's basically saying, look, Galatians, you are out of your mind. Stop and think and reason here. Sometimes we need a little whack on the head, right? Or a slap on the face. Not literally. We would never want to whack somebody over the head or slap them in the face. Or at the face, but sometimes when we speak truth, it feels like a slap in the face. I have had good friends in my own life who have called me out. Carmen, are you thinking true thoughts? And it has slapped, it felt like they might as well have slapped me across the face. All right. It was good. It was good. It was so good. What they said woke me up to the fact of, oh yeah, I'm not thinking right here. I'm not thinking true thoughts. So that's what Paul is doing. Remember, we've said, and I think we see it here again in today's passage, that Paul is all about preserving the truth of the gospel, the good news of Jesus Christ that is based on faith and God's grace. All right? It has nothing to do with works. Now, faith, we see in today's passage 6 times. Today's passage is all about faith in Jesus Christ. Faith, meaning trust, reliance, strong confidence in Jesus, such that okay, we don't need this distorted gospel. We don't need the works of the law. We are living by faith in Jesus Christ, like Paul. Okay, this is fun. Let me look at my notes here. Paul calls out the Galatians. Why? Okay, in this first verse, we see someone has bewitched them. To bewitch someone is to give the evil eye, to look at someone with covetous or evil heart, thought of as casting a spell that wreaks various degrees of harm on its object. So we know, again, this is a letter, so we're only hearing one side of the conversation. We can't hear what the Galatians are saying and what the false teachers are saying, but we get a good idea that they're saying, look, you need circumcision. You need to follow these dietary laws of the Jews. They're distorting the gospel. It's a false gospel. So these false teachers have bewitched the Galatians, and Paul is upset. Why? Because he's so passionate. He is a servant. He's laid down his life for Jesus Christ and preaching the good news of grace that we receive from God through Jesus himself. So This is why Paul is calling out the Galatians. Now, he poses, it's kind of funny because in verse 2 he says, let me ask you only this, but he ends up posing this series of questions. And these are questions, these are rhetorical questions merely to make his point and call them to stop and think and reason with him about the gospel. A couple things that he asked that I marked down. How is one a son of Abraham? How is one, basically he's asking again, how is one justified, which is what we saw on page 82 at the end of last week on day 4. He also asked, how does one receive the Spirit? Now, I meant to also add, how are these miracles being performed? How are you being perfected? Is it through the Spirit or is it by flesh? All right, so Paul is asking these how questions to help them just stop and think, all right, yeah. Am I being perfected? Am I being justified by faith or by the works of the law? Remember, last week we said, as if Paul's presenting like two different doors, two different ways of Jesus Christ. There's door 1, that old door, the works of the law, or there's door 2, works of the faith. And we talked about works of the law. This was duty. This was an obligation to follow the Old Testament law versus faith or trust or reliance on Jesus Christ. So basically he's saying, look, is it works of the law that led you to receiving the Spirit? No. Or was it faith that led you to receiving the Spirit? Yes. Yes, when we believe in Jesus Christ, we immediately receive his Spirit. And he goes on to say, look, was it by the works of the law that Abraham was saved and that you became a son of Abraham? No, it was by faith. By faith. Was it by faith that Abraham was a son of God and that then you yourselves are sons of God? And we can say a resounding yes to that question that Paul poses. Yes, yes, yes. It goes all the way back to Genesis, this idea of receiving God's grace comes through faith. We see it in Genesis 15:6. That's a cross-reference for verse 6. Just as Abraham believed God, and it was counted to him as righteousness. Friends, there's a definition of justification right there. And there's an example of living by faith. Okay, so it really goes back to which door are you going to walk through, because we can't walk through these two doors at the same time, and they lead to different paths. Which one are you going to hold fast to? And he says, look, in verse 7, he gives them this imperative. No, he says, experientially no. You've received the Spirit. You've experienced this. You've heard the good news of Jesus Christ from us. Know this. Have knowledge. Be marked with, if we go back to that word foolish, be marked with reason here. These are the ones who are blessed, who receive God's children, or who receive God's favor to become children of the living God, who received the promise, received the blessings that God gave to Abraham, who himself lived by faith. All right. I think that unpacks today's passage really well. The main point today is that one is justified, one is blessed as sons of Abraham and children of God and receive the Spirit. How? By faith in Jesus. Faith is the key word today. How do we apply it, friends? I think it's, there's probably a number of ways. There is a number of ways. And I wish I could sit and talk with you about how God is using this to prick your own heart and your own mind. What came to my mind is, wow, hold fast to Jesus. Stand firm in the faith. Stand firm with Jesus. It's really all about holding fast to the truth of the gospel. We simply need Jesus. That's it. Let's keep our faith simple. It's all about Jesus. It's all about Jesus. Rely on him today. All right, friends, I'll look forward to seeing you tomorrow.